Hi, in this video we're going to cover a demo walkthrough of how to set up an events connection as well as an event source. So if we get started in our DataForge workspace here, the first thing we're going to do is go to our connections page, and then we can start creating a new connection. And in this case we're going to be pulling from Confluent Kafka events, and it'll be for a demo. And we're going to choose the source connection direction, so we're going to be ingesting the events. However, you could also set up an event output. And then for the connection type, we're going to select that event. And you can see the platform is Kafka. So the first setting that we need to set up here is the Bootstrap server that we're using. So if we go to our Confluent Cloud environment, we're going to open the live cluster here. And we'll go to the cluster settings, and I can copy that Bootstrap server out and paste that in here. And then we'll need to expand the connection parameters, and we need to fill out basically the first two parameters here, as these are required. So the Kafka parameters are going to identify how you're going to authenticate with the Confluent Kafka environment. The second parameter is going to be the actual credentials for the authentication. And then the last three parameters are really optional. So if you have a schema registry set up in Confluent, you can hook that up here as well, which we're going to be doing in this example. So an easy way to kind of get through this is use the documentation as a cheat sheet. So if you open that documentation from the main menu and then search for a Kafka event, you'll see this connection article here. And this will have examples of each of the parameters, what you need to populate, what you don't. As well as actual examples here that we're going to copy, and we'll actually use these for this. So we're going to copy that Kafka parameters example in. We'll copy the sensitive parameters and paste that in. And then in here, you'll probably notice what we need to do is replace the username and the password. So what we're going to do is go to Confluent, and we're going to go to the API keys, and I'm going to create a new key here. So I can copy that key out, and I'm going to replace the username with that, and then I'm going to grab the secret, and I'm going to replace the password with that secret. Okay, and then like I said, we're going to use the schema registry in this example. So what I'm going to do is go back to Confluent again, and then I'll go back to my environment here, and we can see on the bottom right I have that endpoint for the schema registry down here. So I'm going to copy that out, and I'll paste that into this address parameter. And then we're going to get the registry parameters here. So again, I'm going to do a little copy paste. And then same thing for that last setting. And again, similar to the sensitive parameters, what we need to do in here is actually grab an API key for that schema registry. So we'll go to Confluent and we'll create a new key. And we're going to copy the key, and we're going to replace that in here. And then we're going to copy the secret, and we'll replace that key secret in here. Very cool. All right, so now we've got a working connection, so we're going to save this. And now what we can do is actually start creating our sources. So we'll go to the Sources tab, and then we're going to start creating a new source. And we'll just call this Orders. And we'll give the same description. So we've got a demo. And then if we scroll down a little bit where we see the processing type, so this is where you're going to be deciding, is it going to be a batch source or is it a stream source? In this example, I'm going to use a stream source. And then for the connection type, you can see we currently support event connections and then Delta table connections for streams. So we'll choose event, and then we can use that connection dropdown to select the connection we just created. And then we need to populate the topic name. So if I go to Confluent, I'm going to go to my data portal, and then I'm just going to look at all the different topics we have here, and we're going to use this data gen orders topic. So I'm going to copy that name out, and I can paste that into my source setting. And then you'll notice that with stream sources, we do not have a data refresh selection. So the data refresh is going to be none. So any new records that are processed are going to be appended to the hub table effectively. And then in this example, I'm just going to wipe out the schedule just for development purposes, but you may want to have a schedule in there to start your stream. And then with event sources, we do have a number of parameters in the ingestion settings here that we need to make sure are set up for the ingestion to actually succeed, or the stream to succeed, I should say. So the first is going to be the trigger type. So if you use this drop down, you're going to see three options. The first is default. And this is basically saying we're just going to allow Spark to decide when to process the stream, the next set of records. The second is going to be the interval, and this is the default. This is what we're going to be using. So we're basically setting an interval. So every time there's a set of records that are processed, it'll wait, whatever the trigger interval is, to then go get the next set of records to stream through. The third is available now, which basically just continues to stream all the data that is available until there's no more data to stream, and then the stream is actually going to be shut down. So again, we're going to stick with the default here. We'll stick with the default of 1 second. And then what we need to do is actually start defining our schema for the events. So the first that we're going to select here is the value schema type. And this is actually where we're going to use the registry. So we're going to leave it on arrow from registry. And then for key schema, we're going to switch this to string. And then again, you can see the schema fields below for value and key. And really, these are going to be where you would identify the schema if you don't use the registry or string. So if, for example, you used Avro or JSON, you would actually define the schema in these two fields for whichever option you selected. And then the select list is what we're actually going to use to explode the column into multiple columns. So just as an example, if I go back to Confluent, if I look at the value, right, what's really going to happen is every time an event is brought in, there's going to be effectively one column that's named value. But then within that value, there's going to be a number of subfields such as order time, order ID, item ID, etc. So an easy way that we can actually explode that out is to do this star dot and then do value dot star. And so then every time the records are brought in, we're going to explode that value column into multiple columns so that the subfields are each distinct columns in our data set. The next piece that we're going to define here is the key subject and value subject. So this is because we're using the registry and the value, we're going to add a value subject in here. And so again, if I go back to Confluent Cloud, what I can do is go back to my environment and then go to my data contracts. And I can see that this data gen orders value is associated with the data gen orders topic. So we're going to open this up, and I'm just going to copy this name out. And so I'm going to put that into the value subject. And then there's two additional parameters. So if you needed to specify on a source level basis, you can set that up in here. Otherwise, the next thing you're going to define are the offsets, so starting and ending. And again, this is just defining exactly what set of data you want to process through your stream or your batch. So the default is going to be deltas. So first stream is going to include everything it can, and then everything after that is going to be deltas off whatever was pulled last. Other options are earliest, so you could set it to say, hey, always pull the full data set. Or you can actually define a JSON string in these settings so that you identify very specific offsets of the data to process. The last two parameters are going to be more custom. So if you needed to really fully define how we're going to interpret the events that are brought in, you can use these as well. But for now, what we're going to do is save this. So we've got our working settings here. So we're going to pull in those data gen orders. And then if we go to our inputs tab, where you would normally see, pull data now, pull a new data set, we're actually going to start the stream. Okay, so now that we've hit that start stream button, how this actually works is if you already have a Databricks cluster that's up and running and just sitting there idle, the stream will start to use that cluster and immediately start processing data. However, more often than not, what will happen is once you hit that start stream button, you're going to see the stream record get created, and then you'll actually see a new Databricks cluster getting launched. And then as soon as that cluster is up and running, then you'll see the stream actually start processing. So once you see it in this in progress symbol here, you'll know that it's actually running. So we can click that status. And then if we wanted to, we can actually look at the logs and we can see what's happening behind the scenes with that stream. Then what we could do is look at the raw schema, and here we can actually see the effect of that select list parameter that we set up. So we saw the value field that gets brought in, and then we can actually see a unique column for each of those subfields from the value. So that's kind of how that select list works. And then something that's really cool is you can actually join your stream sources with your batch sources to write different rules and transformations. So I actually have a source that is called items that relates to the same data set. And so this is a batch source. And we've got three different fields in the raw schema here. We got item type, item ID, and item cost. And so what we can do is build a relation on item ID, and then we can actually pull item type and item cost into our stream data set. So if we go back to sources and we go to orders, I can create a new relation here. And just like I would with any batch source, it's going to be set up the relation the same. So we'll do orders, item ID, item as the name, and then we're going to go between orders and items for our sources. So it'll be this dot item ID equals related dot item ID. So we can create that relation, and now we can see that it's a many-to-one relation with the many on the the many on the stream source side, and then the one on the batch source side. So now we can use that in any rules that we want, where, for example, I can pull in that item type by using that relation between the stream source and the batch source to grab that item type and kind of just basically just enrich my data. And so how this works now is, now that I have this new rule, basically any records that are going to get streamed through the stream process, they will include the results of those rules as part of the data set. And so we can see that the stream has been running. We've currently processed 392,000 records. And now that's effectively how you would set up your stream or event source. And the second piece of this really is if you wanted to build an output. These stream sources do support outputs as well. So you can basically hook the stream source up to any output that also supports streaming. So at the moment, it's going to be event outputs or delta table outputs. And how that works is we use effectively checkpoints. So when we hook this up to a new output, the stream is going to catch up basically on all the records that it hasn't output yet. And then for any new records that the stream detects, it'll basically run as one full end-to-end pipeline where it'll go get the events from Kafka, it'll stream it through the source, and then directly into the output, whatever that output type is. Now the last piece of this is in the settings. So in this example, we focused on a stream source. However, the event source setup is the exact same if you wanted to use batch. So you could actually have multiple event sources, one doing batch, one doing stream. There's really no limit there. And when you're doing a batch source setup, like I said, the setup is basically the exact same. The only difference is with batch, you're going to end up with a few less parameters that you need to populate for things like that trigger type and that trigger interval. So this is how you'd set up an event connection and then event sources, whether they be batch or stream. Hopefully this helps. Thanks.